Hello and welcome to the Monday Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove. I'm joined by a man who makes my 23-man roster. He makes my 40-man roster for any Gold Cup tournament because he's pure gold. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I feel like you'd struggle to fill out a 40-man roster of local players, so I'm honored, but it's a little bit of a dubious honor, I have to say.
I'd be on there as player coach.
Okay.
All right, so we are here to talk Bruce Arena's 23-man Gold Cup roster.
There we are.
There are many, many questions. There are many, many talking points. It's almost a gift from Bruce Arena to us and to our listeners. Lots to discuss.
Sure, I think we would take it as a gift. Some people have not. Some people have taken it as flummoxing, consternation-inducing.
So the biggest sort of question about this is why so experimental. I think the tweet I saw was from Joel Tolbert, the Reverend Joel Tolbert, tweeted us and said, "I knew we were going to sort of turn the page with this roster. I didn't know we'd skip entire chapters." And that pretty much sums up a lot of people's feelings.
Yeah,
you feel the same? Like when you saw this, were you like, "Whoa, Bruce, that's quite an experiment"?
Not really.
I mean,
because we saw the 40-man roster, and we know that there are probably going to be 6 changes just because that's something you can do. So if you have 6 changes coming out of the group stage, then that's maybe where some of those more established names come in. So it felt like, especially given the relative weakness of the group that we are in, we in the United States,
Panama,
it made sense.
Martinique, and Nicaragua. Okay, so this is probably why people are very, very flummoxed, is the word you used, and I agree, is that, you look at the 40-man roster, and it's got Darlington Gnabry, it's got Christian Pulisic, it's got Michael Bradley, it's got Josie Altidore, it's got Clint Dempsey. It's it's not full strength, but it's a lot of recognisable names.
Right.
23-man roster was missing all the names I just mentioned. It's worth reiterating what Taylor just said. After the group stage, the Gold Cup allows you to change out 6 players. So it may be that those guys come in, the big hitters come in later on. Would you have preferred that we just went full strength from the beginning? Which would be a less experimental, more let's make sure we win this whole thing approach, right?
I would like to win the Gold Cup because obviously it puts you in contention to then be in the next iteration of the Confederations Cup.
If such a thing exists, but yes.
Yeah, it will. I think that was, we weren't sure about that. We've done a little bit of reading, and it seems like the plan is going to be that they'll keep the 2021 Confederations Cup in the same time frame the current one is in, so June, July, and then they will probably...
But not in Qatar because
they will move
200
the location.
degrees.
Exactly, yeah. So and basically then Qatar will get like the Club World Cup or something that year. So there will be a 2021
Are you sure about that?
Cup.
I've not seen like an official FIFA saying, yes, this is what's happening.
That was as FIFA as of 2015, and it hasn't been commented on since then. So my guess is that was what they established, or at least we're like, yeah, we'll get back to that later. Right. And then they're focused on other things for now.
So we should act as if there is a 2021 Confederations Cup, and we should try and get there.
We should. And so I would like to get there. That said, it's a B Gold Cup, basically.
It's a down year, right?
Yeah, Mexico aren't sending anything close to their A squad.
It's Confederations Cup, which we will talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, and if you look at the Gold Cup, you want to win it. It's always important, but you also want to make sure that you're at the World Cup and you're at the World Cup with your strongest team. And so I am okay with trying some different things and having some new faces in there because I think you have to establish depth and maybe keep people performing at their top level and not getting too comfortable in their spot with the national team.
I would also say it's not worth burning out at the Gold Cup, right? Christian Pulisic, he's 18, if you make him play this tournament in July and then he goes back a little late to preseason training with Dortmund, then he's catching up, he starts the season slightly behind, right? It's maybe worth letting him take a little break. Yeah. Fair? And all the guys, so we just looked this up. Actually, you knew already, but I had to look it up. MLS is taking a 2-week break. Right. This means, for the group stage of the Gold Cup, this means Darlington Gnabry, Michael Bradley, all those guys get a 2-week break. They can rest their legs, which is important in the long run.
Yeah, which I'm sure some MLS fans won't love if, say, Jorge Villafaña, who is in this 23-man squad, if he is released after the group stage and Greg Garza from Atlanta is called in to replace him. I'm sure Atlanta fans will be like, oh, great. So he got like the 3-week break or the 2-week break, and now he's not going to be playing for us.
But that's interesting, right? Because they're probably torn between, I like Greg Garza, he's my guy, I want him to compete for a US national team starting spot, but also I like Greg Garza, he's my left back, please let me keep him. We've got MLS games to play.
Exactly.
I did see a tweet from, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, but a Portland fan saying they're glad Darlington Gnabry was in the 40 but not in the 23 because that means that Gnabry is now categorised alongside Bradley, Dempsey, Altidore as like gold-plated, that's my phrase, gold-plated first-team players who don't need to prove themselves in a Gold Cup.
Yeah, and so I think that's what a lot of those guys are, the guys who were in the 40 but not in the 23. I still think it's a little strange.
Platinum-plated.
Okay. I still think it's a little confusing to have Pulisic in there, though. That one is the one that throws me.
It's weird, right?
Because it's not as though, like with the domestic-based players, it makes sense, right? Like, they're there, essentially. You can call
the
them
MLS players, you mean?
Yeah. Versus... with the MLS-based players, like, they're there. It's not that big of a deal. Whereas Pulisic, I mean, he's theoretically, I'm assuming, either back in Germany. Maybe he's on vacation, and that's why they haven't worried about it.
He was recently in Hershey, Pennsylvania at the Hershey Classic, where he answered the question, would you ever play for Bayern Munich? And he said no.
Yeah, and I think he was also maybe catching footballs. I saw some gifts of that, too.
I think he was just back in the US for summer, right?
Yeah, but I think maybe then he will go back, or maybe he'll just be hanging out, in which case he's not missing preseason, which then makes it a little bit more confusing. But that's the only one that kind of makes me scratch my head a little bit.
No, but we're talking about this roster now. The Gold Cup doesn't kick off until July 7th or 8th. I think US's first game is July 8th, and then like a couple weeks later, you're getting into preseason, so it's going to overlap. Gold Cup's really weirdly timed, in my opinion.
It is indeed.
Pulisic is the head scratcher. I kind of feel like they just wanted the option just in case. Because the thing we said about the 6 people changing, it has to come from the original 40-man preliminary roster, correct?
Right.
So maybe you just want to never rule out Pulisic entirely. It's a US soccer policy. It's a bylaw.
But I think, given the situation at club level that they have a new manager, he's going to want to impress. I think it's far more likely that he will be with Dortmund, even if the United States are in desperate need of a number 10 in the knockout round. Okay, so let's talk about the 23 guys that were selected for the group stage. Who's the most interesting to you? Like, which name did you look at and rub your hands together and be like, yes, I'm looking forward to seeing him play Panama, Martinique, Nicaragua? First of all, if I'm being honest, none of these. Like, I mean, and it's not that. It's that, like, I don't have that reaction. I really don't. I'm never like, yes, I can't wait. Like, it's just sort of like,
you finally hit jaded after 7 years of podcasting?
No, it's just more so like I'm excited to see all these guys, but it's the Gold Cup, and it's with the World Cup in mind. We're watching the Confederations Cup now. It's hard to get excited for a competition in which, like, it doesn't matter. If Kenny Saif, for example, would be the player that I'm excited to see. If he comes in and destroys Martinique, does that really do that much? And it's sort of that, like, it's the issue with these types of tournaments. It's the issue with friendlies. Does it really do that much? Because if a player looks terrible, then they look terrible. But, it's a friendly, we're trying stuff. And if they look amazing, well, it's a friendly, we're trying stuff.
Okay, well, Kenny Saif, he will play Panama, which is, that's a tougher game. It's more of a, CONCACAF Hex kind of standard opponent, Panama. And then he's going to, if he sticks around, he'll be with us in the knockout round. So you may see Kenny Saif up against Mexico or Honduras or Costa Rica. You know what I mean? So you may see a more competitive team than Martinique for Kenny Saif to destroy.
Yeah, that's true.
Assuming Kenny Saif is capable of destroying teams. But
true.
That's the other part of it, right, is we could see him disappoint against Martinique, and then we're like, oh, no.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm just being a little bit too semantic here, but it's more like I don't have that reaction because I feel like you and I are both so familiar with this U.S. national team that to be like, oh, man, this guy, I can't, it's going to be a big thing. It's exciting to see certain people called in. It's exciting to see certain MLS players get their debut and get like kind of the recognition they deserve. But so with that said, anytime there are new players who you haven't seen before, it is sort of like, oh, this is exciting. This is an opportunity.
Fresh new faces. Okay, so which fresh new faces are you looking forward to seeing?
As we already said, it's Kenny Saif.
It is Kenny Saif, far and away number one.
Yeah, I think so. Because
why so? Why not Dom Dwyer, for example, who's sort of one step ahead of me in the naturalization process? Dom Dwyer, English-born, now an American citizen, eligible for a call-up. He's in this roster.
He is.
Sporting KC fans will be excited. MLS fans will be excited. I'm excited.
Okay. Yeah. So should we start with you then?
No, I'm just saying that I'm arguing that there are players to be excited about seeing these fresh faces.
Right.
Okay. So, why Kenny Saif above Dom Dwyer for you?
I think it's because it's a player we've heard about for years now. We've been hearing, he might come. He's probably going to play for Israel. He's in the Champions League. He maybe
did play for Israel a little bit, right?
Yeah, he got 2 caps there, but in non-competitive fixtures, obviously. And so it's a guy that like maybe seemed like he might be interested, but it also never seemed like it was actually going to be a possibility. So that it is now that he's followed the one-time switch. It's been approved. He's in camp. He'll be there. It will be exciting to see him play. He's sort of like not the same, but like sort of like a Josh Gatt, where we're like, we know he's out there. I've never really seen him. I can't claim to have watched Ghent or Genk. I always forget which one he is.
He plays for Ghent.
Thank you. Yeah. I can't claim to have watched them with any sort of regularity, and I haven't
in the Belgian
watched.
League
And I haven't watched Israeli friendlies.
So all we know is, weirdly, I listened to the first time to your interview with Brian Sciaretta from maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Really good interview. I'd encourage people to go back and listen if you haven't. But he talks about Kenny Saif with you at length. I'm reminding listeners, not you. I know you were there, so you know. But he talks about Saif as a guy who is basically hyper competitive and is really going to bring it, and that will win people over.
Yep.
And I'm almost excited to see this. Like, it's almost like Brian Sciaretta's hyped him up in my head as this hyper competitive man who's going to chase everything down.
Yep.
We think on the left wing, based on what we've seen about him, it seems like he's left wing, maybe can play some right wing, has played some left back, but you can expect to see him on the left for the United States.
So I'm excited to see him for sure. I am excited to see Dom Dwyer as well, because he's finally gotten a citizenship. But it's just more so like Kenny Saif is the unknown, and the unknown is probably going to be a little bit more alluring, at least for me.
Fair enough, yeah. It's nice to like peer into the darkness and see what's there, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, I guess.
Okay, Dom Dwyer, we have seen him in MLS, and what I've seen, this is why I'm excited about him, for Sporting KC, is a really like clever, energetic striker he's almost like a pest. You know what I'm saying? If you're a defender, he's a pest. And I'm looking forward to seeing that in a US national team shirt.
Yeah, I mean, we tweeted about like, or yesterday I retweeted Matt Doyle doing his Facebook Live Q&A. Somebody asked him what their expectation was, what his expectation was for Dom Dwyer, and his point was like, he is made for CONCACAF. Like, he's made for annoying people, getting under defender skins, agitating, finding timely goals, but also maybe getting some people carded that otherwise would not have been carded.
What about players getting their due, or sort of players earning their call-up? I've got a name in my head. I want to see if you've got anyone who you're sort of like, yeah, good for you kind of thing.
Probably Christian Roldan would be
that was
the
mine.
big one.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, Seattle Sounders midfielder. He's one that we've talked about for a good long while now. Probably Seattle fans have talked about him longer than that. But it's nice to see him kind of earn his way in. He was a player that Bruce Arena was asked about like in his first press conference or Facebook Live moment.
I think he mentioned him as a nice passer of the ball. But the more I see of Christian Roldan, he's also like, can put in a good tackle in defensive midfield, and he's like very confident and comfortable. It's a guy I think could have a very interesting international future. And now
that you mentioned that, like, it's also worth noting, I think that in that like initial Facebook Live conversation, Arena said like he's on the radar. We expect to see more of him in 2017. And you and I both kind of thought like, okay, that means Gold Cup squad. And here we are, and he's in the Gold Cup squad. Yeah. So it also points to...
It's all going to plan.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that there is a plan. There is sort of a development plan in place for how we're going to get different people, different levels of experience at different times, and see what works.
I'd say in similar categories. I'm looking at the screen here because we've got the 23-man roster up. Kellen Rowe, New England Revolution. Can't say I know too much about him, except that he's a right winger who looks like, from his highlight reel, can deliver a lovely, lovely cross. So you expect to see Kellen Rowe going down the wing. And Justin Morrow. To me, Justin Morrow is the more interesting left back for Toronto FC, because whatever Kellen Rowe does on the right wing, we have a lot of right wingers, right? One of them is possibly Christian Pulisic. So, it's tough for him to crack on. But there's a shortage of fullbacks. And Justin Morrow, plenty of experience, 29 years old, I looked it up. Possible left back, could stake a claim for a spot.
Yes. So he can. You mentioned the shortage at fullbacks. That's where Eric Lehigh comes in for me as well. And I think you can scratch his name off the what about list, because it's usually like, what about Danny Williams? What about Perry Kitchen? What about Eric Lehigh? Those are the three of the biggest ones. Can't say much for the first two, but for Eric Lehigh, I can say he definitely seems to have played himself into contention. And again, I think he was another one that maybe Arena has had his eye on with an eye towards the Gold Cup, and here we are.
So here's my guess with Eric Lehigh. Arena obviously knew he existed, but had never worked with him.
He was aware that he was a person.
Right, but can't call him in for the January camp because he's in Europe with Nottingham Forest. They don't let players go for whole months to go to US camps.
Selfish.
Right? Then, because he's never worked with him, can't call him in for the qualifiers in March because he's never worked with him. Can't call him in for the qualifiers in June because he's never worked with him. It's too much of a gamble, right? You'd rather have Graham Zusi, who you know, than have Eric Lehigh, who you've literally never met unless there was a quick coffee in Nottingham somewhere. Right?
Sure, theoretically.
So this is the first chance for Bruce Arena to say, hey, Eric Lehigh, coming over, let's spend a month together.
Yeah, and I think that this is, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, that it does seem like maybe this is the audition to be the backup right back.
Possibly, yeah.
That's my thinking, and that's again why I'm excited to have Eric Lehigh here.
Because it's what Zusi and Lehigh are the two right backs on this roster, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see both of them start a game here or there.
And we had that question. We put it out on Twitter, just basically saying, "What do you want to know? What do you want us to talk about?" JT Guads, his point was, you go back to the 2014 World Cup, and basically all of our eggs were in the Josie Altidore stays fit and does things basket.
All of our eggs were in a basket made of Josie Altidore's hamstrings.
Yeah, that didn't go so well. And so his point is who do you see kind of as the backup, as the second option, or who do you think is in here as maybe a potential replacement?
Oh, not just to Josie Altidore, but to anyone who's got a first team spot.
And I do think that's why Eric Lehigh is here, and I do think that's why you might see Greg Garza in here as well, and Justin Morrow. I think Bruce Arena is going to want to continue to find possible second or third choice options, and I think all of those players are in contention for both the World Cup and for potentially backup options going forward.
I agree with you. The other name that jumps out at me is Jorge Villafana, and here's why. He's the only, correct me if I'm wrong, he's the only US national team starter who's on the 23-man roster. as in Jorge Villafana started some big games recently. He's basically the first choice left back for the United States.
Yeah, I think that's
he's on the 23-man roster. So is this a chance for just Arena to work with him a little more?
Yes, I
it
think
is,
so.
right?
I think maybe it's also that Liga MX has not yet started. They will be starting soon, and that's why I think a lot of the speculation is that after the group stage, it will be Liga MX players. That was another Matt Doyle point.
Yes.
Heading home.
This is a big thing maybe for our listeners to know, right, is Matt Doyle predicts, and I think this makes sense, that, all the Liga MX players will be the guys that leave after the group stage for the big guns like Bradley, Altidore, Dempsey maybe, to come in and replace them.
Yes.
So that kind of means that guys like Kellen Rowe, they're not so much like perform or get out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they're probably going to be able to hold on when the Liga MX guys go.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you look at the Liga MX players, I mean, really, none of them are guaranteed starters. So it makes sense.
For the US, you mean?
Yeah, so it's not as though, like... It's not as
Except
though
Villafana. I'd say Villafana maybe.
What I mean to say, aside from Villafana, as in, it's not like John Brooks is playing in Mexico and has been left off to give him some rest. It's like if John Brooks were in Mexico, he would probably be in this team because he has the time off. Like Omar Gonzalez is probably the closest. He's in this squad. He'll probably leave when Villafana does. But I think for Villafana, there's the added emphasis on getting him minutes and maybe getting him some attention. Because again, he is still in a relatively precarious position with Santos Laguna.
Is he 50-50 on getting that starting left back spot?
I think so. And so maybe this is trying to remind everybody that, no, he's the starting left back for the U.S. national team. Maybe that creates some interest from MLS clubs or from other Mexican clubs, or maybe Santos Laguna just think, okay, let's, he's had a good offseason. He's been playing regularly for the United States again. Yeah. Let's see what he can do in preseason.
Oh, so they might just tune in and see him banging in assists against Panama and be like, oh yeah, we should use him.
I hope that's what it is. They just happen to stumble across him one day, not they're actively watching one of their employees.
Okay, we had a question from the OG.
Oh, actually, before we move on, I did want to add to that point about like kind of backup players and players.
Oh, JT Watt's question,
I mean, I think if you look in the midfield, I think Kellen Acosta is probably already has that role as the backup to maybe Michael Bradley. Maybe if you need another holding midfielder.
I would say that if we go like with an attacking, it's basically the Honduras game versus the Trinidad game versus the Mexico game. If we go all out attack, it's Bradley holding Pulisic ahead.
Yep.
If we go with a more solid two-man midfield, it's Bradley next to Acosta.
Yep.
So I think Acosta is more or less, with Jermaine Jones injured, first choice when we need a more solid central midfield.
Yeah. So I think that like. That's why he's in there, because you want to see him getting more minutes and see what he does with those minutes.
Yeah, because he still needs the experience, right? So get him out there, get him playing a whole tournament. Hopefully, that's what I'd love to see. Yeah,
absolutely. Same thing probably for Dax McCarty as well, since I think he's maybe the one underneath Kellen Acosta right now as that holding midfielder. So that makes sense. And then I think overall what Arena is probably looking for is to see how guys adapt. That, say, against Panama, we go full 4-2, or maybe we're a little more conservative, but against Nicaragua, we try something different. You might want to see if Juan Agudelo can be a lone striker in a 4-2-3-1, but then in a 4-4-2, how does he do with a partner?
Yeah.
He said he prefers playing with a partner on the Total Soccer Show, so we know that much.
I listened to that interview last week. I think he said, I might be paraphrasing, he prefers playing with a partner because then you can keep both defenders busy.
Yep.
And essentially means I don't want to get left alone, right? But he also understands why you can't always go two strikers because then you have to sacrifice numbers in midfield.
Look at you listening to interviews.
Yeah.
Good job. So I think that's the other thing Arena will want to see, because I do expect him to be comfortable, or will need to be comfortable changing things up, because the World Cup is the World Cup, and there's a chance that we get a relatively weak team, and then there's a chance that we get Germany or Brazil, and you kind of can't approach those two games with the same tactics.
Is this a big tournament for Agudelo? Because
I think so.
Remember, he said his favourite goal was on his debut, which I think was late 2010 against South Africa. He was 17 years old. He's now 24. It's been 7 years of Juan Agudelo not quite established himself in the US national team. It would be great if he had a lights-out tournament, scored a ton of goals. Yeah. But I'd say the same for Dom Dwyer, and I'd say the same for Jordan Morris. So what worries me is we've got three strikers. We may have Josie Altidore and Clint Dempsey come in later. They have a short amount of time to make a big stamp on this tournament, and I'm worried they can't all do it. So we might end up saying, oh, that was great. Dwyer's this American player now. This is great. Oh, but Agudelo was a little disappointing. Jordan Morris didn't do that much. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, put it this way. Jordan Morris could come in and have a great tournament, and he will still be in contention. He could have a bad tournament, and I think it would still be he's Jordan Morris. He's in that competition.
Body of work.
If you're doing a 40-man roster, he's probably in the 40, but maybe not the 23.
Yeah.
If Juan Agudelo comes in and has a not great tournament, I think maybe he isn't in consideration all the way for that 40-man roster. Right. I'm with you that if he comes in, scores 3 or 4 goals,
the wild card.
Looks good. I mean, but Dom Dwyer the same. I think both of them can play themselves into contention or they can play themselves out. But I don't think they can stay where they are, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
Because that's what all of this is about, right? It's fine-tuning for the upcoming World Cup and the upcoming World Cup qualifiers.
Well, that's a good question. I think it is fine-tuning for the World Cup qualifiers because it could turn out that Dom Dwyer is this wonderful international player that you just can't leave off, right? It could be he's this perfect type international player. Therefore, we find him and we're like, get him in there. I don't think everything is World Cup geared because it could be like Christian Roldan needs to like get a couple of US games. Maybe he doesn't get to the 2018 World Cup, but maybe beyond that he's an option. Like there will still be soccer after the 2018 World Cup.
No, that's it. It's over. All the soccer will end. But I do think that there are like some of the questions we got can be answered with the eye towards the 2018 World Cup. So, for example, we got a lot of questions about why no Ethan Horvath in here. That it seems like he suddenly is going to, not suddenly, but he is probably going to be the starter in Belgium next season. Why doesn't he get a look? Why? And he's
most people's pick for like when Tim Howard finally retires. Probably the guy we should give the gloves to is Ethan Horvath.
And that's the answer, I think, is that Tim Howard is probably going to be the number one in this group. Brad Guzan is going to be the number two, and he'll be the number one in this tournament, which leaves the number three spot. And then maybe that's Nick Rimando, maybe it's one of these guys, maybe it's Jesse Gonzalez when his paperwork goes through. And my guess would be that, Horvath was told, you can be here, but you're going to be the number three at the World Cup at best. So if you want to, you can focus on your club, focus on preseason, cement that role, and then we'll see what happens.
So we don't have any inside information, but like logically our best guess is that if you're given the choice between go to the Gold Cup and like get some international experience or establish yourself with your new club. He just moved to Club Bruges a few months ago, isn't the definite starter. So if he misses pre-season with Bruges, he suddenly may not have that starting job. And then that derails his career in a way that a few Gold Cup appearances, probably not worth the trade-off. So this may be like a long-term decision.
Yeah, and I think this is where it helps to have Bruce Arena as your national team manager because the word we hear about him, or the combination of words are practical or pragmatic, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to get
He's like a good Sam Allardyce.
Yeah, but that's really well said, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is that you're never going to hear him say like, "Look, this is it. You make this decision." And I do think that there are other managers out there who would say like, "Look, yeah, you might be third choice, but you need to be here. You need to be in this team." And I think Bruce Arena has the kind of wherewithal to say like, "Look, you're the number three. You're in competition for the number three, but I understand if that isn't enough to make you come into the Gold Cup, where you're probably not going to start that many games.
Right.
It's probably going to be Brad Guzan."
Yeah.
So like, I appreciate that kind of approach. It's a little bit more laid back, and it's a little bit more like, look, here's the actual situation, and not you need to be here no matter what, 100%.
While we're talking keepers, can we talk Jesse Gonzalez then? Because he's on the 40-man roster.
He is.
I really expected him to be on the 23-man roster, but instead it is Brad Guzan, Bill Hamid, Sean Johnson. No Jesse Gonzalez, and we think there's no official statement. I don't think that it's that his paperwork for the switch, the one-time switch back to the US, hasn't been completed in time.
Yes, and there are lots of different interpretations of this out there, ranging from he never filed the paperwork, that's not true, to FIFA are delaying it, that might be true. My guess is going to be...
Paperwork takes time.
Paperwork takes time, but Kenny Saif's has already been processed. My guess is going to be that Kenny Saif got his in faster, and that it's just been done. Because it's not as though his situation is any more or less difficult. Like, he played for the Israeli national team. Jesse Gonzalez played for Mexico at youth level, so that's why you have to do the one-time switch. My guess is just that, like if I were supposed to do some paperwork and you asked me like, have I done it? And I was like, we're always considering a hit send. Yes, I have definitely submitted it. I'm waiting on the people to process the paperwork now. Like, you can have that timetable of when it gets submitted, and it might have been like you have a 2-week window, and Kenny Hassan did it on day 1, and Jesse Gonzalez did it on day 14, and that might be the difference, because they've said it might be a matter of weeks until the clearance comes
you're
through.
saying Jesse Gonzalez was the kid that did his homework the night before or the morning of?
Yeah, or made the decision that he cared about doing the homework, if that makes sense. I mean, that's complete speculation again, but that's my guess. That's why he's not there for sure, though.
Speculation.
Yes, but it has been confirmed that the paperwork has been submitted.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, it kind of doesn't matter if he ends up playing in this Gold Cup, because a one-time switch is exactly that. It's a one-time switch.
One time being the key phrase.
So for a lot of people, it's like, get him in the Gold Cup. That's an official FIFA competition. Now they're cap-tied. In this situation, it kind of doesn't matter, because if that paperwork has been filed and gets approved, then it's over and done with.
Yeah. But it would be satisfying to see him in the US keeper jersey.
Oh, no, I would really like to because, again, we've been impressed by him for years. He's another one that you and I, like, I think at the exact same time watched him in the same game, and we're like, this kid, who is he? Can he play for the USA? He's another one that we immediately did some Googling and some Wikipediaing on. So I very much would like to see him in the U.S. squad, both in the Gold Cup and going forward. I'm just saying, again, it's the practical mindset of we might not, and that's not the worst thing, especially because I think Brad Guzan was always going to start at least against Panama.
Okay, so a couple more questions to get to, but since we've covered most of the roster, the only thing we haven't talked about is central defenders. Yeah. And the guys named are Gonzalez, Hedges, Biesler, and Matt Miazga.
Yep.
That's kind of exciting to me because that's like a good, like steady veteran-y presence. Plus, Matt Miazga and Matt Hedges both get some experience.
See, here's why talking is a good thing, Daryl. Because the more we talk about this, the more I'm like, all right, I'm excited to see Matt Miazga.
My job is mostly cheering you up and getting you excited.
Whatever, man. I'm cheerful sometimes. I'm just trying to be reserved in my approach. But no, you're right.
It would be good to see Matt Miazga back in action, right? Because it does feel like. I feel like we didn't pay enough attention to him in Vitesse Arnhem. I was saying that he had like a rough season, but a lot of people say like since January, February, he's been a regular starter and has done really well and everybody's impressed. So it would be nice for us to get a look at how much he's improved, how much he's matured.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I also think that right now it seems as though if we're going with like our ideal starting 11, we've got John Brooks and we've got Jeff Cameron. If they're both fully fit, those are your two starters. It seems like maybe the third option, or like the first option if one of them gets injured, is Omar Gonzalez.
Yeah, because Bruce hearts Omar.
And I heart Omar to some extent, but I still have concerns about Omar Gonzalez. But there could also be the case that, say you do take Graham Zusi to the World Cup as your backup right back, and then DeAndre Edlin goes down and you draw Portugal. Like, I don't know if I want Graham Zusi marking Cristiano Ronaldo. So then it's Jeff Cameron probably sliding across. So then suddenly you do need to fill in even before an injury. So I think there are opportunities for
you always take four centre-backs, right? And you've only named three, so there is a spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think for all those reasons, there's definitely an opening at centre-back, and I do think this is a position where it is kind of wide open because you have many, many different options. We talked about Steve Birnbaum is in the 40, but I think he's not in the 23, but is in the 40, might get called in after the group stage.
Probably Gonzalez goes back to Pachuca, in comes Birnbaum.
But Tim Ream is also in consideration. So like
not for Gold Cup, but just in general.
Just in general. So you do have other center-back choices, but I think nobody has really locked it down, nor should they have, because the World Cup is a year away.
Step up Matt Hedges.
Yeah.
Step up Matt Hedges. The thing I keep hearing about Matt Hedges is, I think Matt Miazga for World Cup is a bit of a reach. The thing I keep hearing about Hedges is he's an organiser. He's a talker. And, I love a defensive talker. It's my favourite role in a back four is to tell everybody else who to mark. I think if Hedges can step up and be that guy, then I think that's a key thing for the US to have.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but that's an if. And I think you're right that Hedges is probably like in the best position given like his overall situation, that he's a younger player but that he has a lot of upside, that he seems to have proven his way and played his way into contention. That said, I mean, Matt Miazga, if he goes on, say he gets a loan to a Premier League club or a Championship club,
PSV I think we're sniffing around,
and suddenly just saying hypothetically, like if he is then suddenly starting for one of those teams and doing really, really well and looks good, maybe he gets some consideration for the September World Cup qualifiers or the fall October qualifiers. I forget if they're October or November.
There are two in September, two in October.
I'm just saying, like it's conceivable that he could play his way in. It's also very conceivable that Matt Hedges could do that, that even Matt Biesler or any of the other names we've talked about. So I think that there are definitely some options there and some openings there.
All right, should we go back to Twitter and see some of the questions we had coming in?
Sure.
Question from the OG. This pretty much closes the door on Kleshton, Feilhaber and Wando, right?
Yes and no, in the sense that Wando is in the 40, so no.
He could very well be coming in after the group stage.
Very, very well could be coming in after the group stage. Kleshton and Feilhaber maybe a little bit more,
We talked about this off air, right?
Yeah.
Which I think my take was they are not experimental enough in that they're already like late 20s or early 30s. Bruce knows all about them. There's no need to get them in for a Gold Cup and get a look at them, right? We got them in to get a look at them in the Gold Cup in like 2007 when Benny Feilhaber scored the winner. It's been 10 years since we had a look at Benny Feilhaber in the Gold Cup, okay? Maybe 2009? I may have that wrong. But then when you go to the full senior roster, it seems they're just outside of the 23 to 27 first choice midfielders. And that's just where they are now, right? The door's not closed on them. They would just need like Darlington, Gnabry, Christian Pulisic, Fabian Johnson, a lot of other attacking midfielders to be injured or suspended or whatever for Kleshton and Feilhaber to have a chance to be in the squad. And that's just where we are, right? Don't experiment with them in the Gold Cup. Probably won't call them up for the first choice squad, but they're there if you need them.
Yeah, and I think I've come up with an analogy here that I'm very pleased with. Again, again, this is on the fly, so if this doesn't make sense, I apologize. But do you remember when we first started seeing Christian Pulisic getting minutes for the senior national team? And I feel like at the time coincided with Sasha Kljestan getting more minutes, and the two of them looked really, really good.
Yeah.
I feel like Pulisic and
Kljestan
a little bit. I feel like the two of them are like Simon and Garfunkel, where it's like they're really good together. Look how exciting they are. This is going to be something amazing. And then slowly it's like, Art Garfunkel is great, Sasha Kljestan is great, but let's be real. Like, it's going to be Simon and Pulisic that are going to be the ones moving up.
Let's all listen to Graceland.
Yeah, exactly. So it just feels like maybe that's what's happened now. That, like, yes.
Not ironically, Pulisic has diamonds on the soles of his shoes.
But I just think it's like, Kljestan, Fehlhaber, you kind of know what they are. They're in that weird in-between situation.
Yeah.
Kljestan, I would think more so that if there is an injury to Pulisic or you have an injury to another midfielder, that Kljestan is probably the one that Bruce Arena will call in more readily.
Really? I know Fehlhaber had the better performance in January.
That's
remember?
true.
He had
That's
that reverse
true,
pass assist to Jordan Morris.
You're right. But so I think the point there, you're right, absolutely. And so I think the point there would be that either one is like a serviceable replacement, but you kind of know where you are. And then you've also got age as a factor there too. So with that said, I think that's why they're probably not included. Whereas Wando seems to always be in consideration for at least the 40.
Matthew asked us, any snubs, in your opinion, not counting the guys who may come in later, of course?
I mean, it just depends on how you're identifying a snub. Because, like, maybe Horvath you could see as a snub because he's probably the best talent that is available but isn't on the team.
But again, we said we may be just doing him a favour, go establish yourself with Club Brugge.
I think the other one that, again, could theoretically be considered to be a snub, that's a long way of saying that one, is probably Danny Williams, maybe Perry Kitchen. Perry Kitchen kind of fell off there at the end in the SPL, but Danny Williams had a strong season with Reading in the championship, just missed out on promotion.
May get it through the back door?
Yeah, didn't take a new offer. I think was offered a new contract by Reading, turned it down, or at least didn't sign it because it seems like maybe he's getting some attention from Huddersfield or other Premier League clubs. So maybe that's why he wasn't looked at as well, because you want to let him gel with a Premier League team in preseason.
And here's the overall thing with the Gold Cup, right? It is a Confederation tournament, but it's not the World Cup. It is not everybody's be-all and end-all. So there will be people like Danny Williams who are negotiating their futures, who will happily not put everything aside to play in the Gold Cup because their club career is more important. Whereas if this was a World Cup year, you would do, or even a European Championships because it's a bigger tournament. Do you remember how Robson Kanu was just like, unemployed, don't care, go into the Euros, gonna go there and see what happens. Whereas Gold Cup just isn't the same, doesn't have the same draw that you would stop your life to do it. Right?
No, and I want to say again that really this is a thing I hadn't really thought of until this show, but like, a big part of this for me is Bruce Arena. And I know it's been a while since like you worked in an office. It's been a while since I worked in an office as well.
What'd you call this?
Well, for someone else in an office.
I see.
But like, I remember one of my old employers, I won't name names, but it's one of the things that frustrates me the most is there was like a blizzard here in Richmond. Like all the roads were closed, but we were expected to go into work. And it was sort of like, I mean, if you can get here, like it was that sort of like, we're not going to necessarily count it against you, but we're probably going to count it against you. Now,
are you saying Bruce wouldn't do that?
No, I don't think he would. And I think that's what this is.
He'd just be like, yo, snow day.
Yeah, basically. Like, but I think that's it. Is like, say Danny Williams, for example, does want to focus on his club career because that's where he's going to make more money. That is more important probably in the short and long term. So I think, I'm not even saying with Jurgen Klinsmann. I'm saying with some national team coaches, I think if you said, no, I really want to focus on this situation, I'm not really interested right now, or like, whatever, if you're just not that excited, it would be like, all right, well, then you're done. We're not even considering you anymore. And I do think that Arena is a little bit more like, okay, no, that makes total sense. Like, you would be in contention anyway. You're still in contention. So go focus on that, and we'll see what happens in a couple months.
Look how Bruce Arena handled the Landon Donovan situation, right? He said, like, I'm not a fan of it. I'd rather have him come and play. But if that's what he's got to do, then he's going to go and do it. And when he gets back, we'll see what the situation is.
Yeah. And there you are. So I think that's where, with that in mind, it's tough to say that there are, like, significant snubs or personal feelings or emotions factored into this too much. So, I think that's why I would say, like, nothing really stands out to me aside from the names I've mentioned. You could make the argument for Kljestan and Fehlhaber. I know Josh Gatt retweeted a thing about... it was about... I always have to pause for a moment because I get him confused with the guy from the Book of Mormon, which is Josh Gad, I believe. But Josh Gatt, like, he retweeted somebody saying, like, hey, U.S. Soccer, why
Josh Gatt faster.
Yeah. in playing ability, maybe not talking.
Josh Gad faster mouth, Josh Gad faster feet.
Josh Gad better at talking awkwardly with Billy Crystal in that short-lived show. Yeah. But I think Josh Gad retweeted somebody saying, like, hey, U.S. Soccer, why not take a look at him? He's in form and playing well. So maybe he was also frustrated. No.
That's not so bad. Minnesota fans, do not worry. I think maybe Christian Ramirez deserved a look here. He will not go unmentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mention him.
I mentioned him. I think maybe Dom Dwyer's citizenship got in Christian Ramirez's way. Maybe just the fact that Agudelo has been sort of on the bubble for so long. Maybe the fact that Jordan Morris has been behind Wood, Dempsey, Altidore for so long and deserves a shot. It just puts you even far down the roster, far down the pecking order, even when Altidore and Dempsey and Wood aren't there. It's kind of a good thing. It means the US has depth at forwards.
Yes, it does. But it also means that the United States have like some players that could play forward that maybe also are why Ramirez isn't there, why other forwards aren't there, which leads me to my question for you, Daryl Grove, of maybe, so snubs aside, are there any players on this roster that you were surprised to see included on this roster?
Are you trying to get me to say Jesse Zerders?
No.
The reason I'm not surprised is because he's a Bruce Arena guy, and Bruce Arena trusts him to do a job on the wing or be the fourth forward if maybe you want a two-man forward line and a couple of these guys are injured or what have you. So he's there for his versatility and for the fact that Bruce trusts him to do a job, not there for his current form, which the only thing I know of Jesse's current form is that someone sent us a poop emoji on Twitter.
I mean, I saw a couple of different comments like, I'm excited for this roster. I mean, Jesse Zardes, okay. Or like, Jesse Zardes, I guess, why not? And then I think the other one that maybe some people were a little bit confused by, I will not say me, and I'm not saying this as like a passive way of saying I was confused by it, but Jordan Morris was the one that I saw a couple people say, like, his form hasn't been very good. He hasn't been scoring loads of goals for Seattle. But the reality is...
Again, body of work.
Yeah, it's Jordan Morris. He's always going to be included in there, especially when fit, when ready to go. And with the reality of having a 2-week break, it means you're not, like, hurting Seattle by bringing him in.
All right, so are we more excited for the Gold Cup now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. The first game is Saturday, July 8th, against Panama, which is easily the toughest game in the whole group stage. It's a Panama team that doesn't have Roman Torres. He was okay with not being called up, which means he essentially said, leave me alone.
I think he requested to not be put on the 23-man roster.
But it does have, say, Anibal Godoy, who's a kind of scary midfielder, right? Gabi Torres. It's not a terrible team. Whereas Martinique and Nicaragua, like, with all due respect, they do not look like strong teams. It should be... I don't want to set expectations too high, but we should really beat them heavily. Yes,
I think so. It shouldn't be a problem getting out of this group stage.
Yes.
Now, I will ask you this, though, because we did have another question from, I believe, Yazan. I apologize if that's wrong, about what happens after the group stage. He said, do you guys think Bruce plans to stick with this team through the tournament, or will he opt to make changes? It obviously depends in part on how the group stage goes.
Didn't we already answer this by saying we think the Liga MX guys will go back and they'll bring in some of the bigger players.
So, but do you think he makes all 6? Because I think there's only 4 Liga MX guys in there.
Maybe only 4, you don't have to do all 6.
You do not. Right? And I guess the reality is you're probably going to have an injury or two, or somebody will have, like, because you could totally see that, like, if Matt Miazga, for example, does start a game, gets, like, a tight hamstring, you probably don't want to risk him pulling a hamstring right before preseason starts.
And I think the obvious example, did we already talk about this? Stop me if we did. But the obvious example was you get a look at Villafana and Justin Morrow as your 2 left-backs. Eventually Villafana goes back to Santos Laguna, and then you bring in Greg Garza, and then you've got to have a look at everybody, and no one's upset. Everybody's got a game. It's kind of a perfect compromise.
So then do you think we see some of the bigger names in the knockout round? Do you think we see, say, Michael Bradley or Josie Altidore, maybe Tim Howard? Do you think we see any of those guys in there, or do you think it is sort of like-for-like replacements?
I think it'll be the bigger names. Yeah, I really do. I think it'll be the bigger names.
And if it's in the meantime, in the group stage, final question about the group stage activity, who do you see being the kind of leaders on this team then? We had that question as well. I forget who asked it. I apologize. But I'm wondering, who do you think can kind of step up and be the senior players? Not necessarily just in terms of caps, but who do you think people will look to kind of organize things, to take the lead, to run this team?
So Steve Toto is who asked us that question.
Thank you.
I think I'm looking at, weirdly, Dax McCarty because he does seem to be that natural leader type guy, even though he's like not that established a US national team player. Like he doesn't have 100 caps or whatever.
He doesn't, but I think didn't his first cap come in like 2011 or something like that? Like he's been around for a while.
And I think he captained a January camp, right? I think he's just that kind of guy. I think Omar Gonzalez, just for experience, and maybe Matt Hedges has that sort of leadership quality about him as well.
I just clicked. 2009 was Dax McCarty's first senior
cap
for the U.S. national team. So yeah, he's been around for a good long while. Maybe Bedoya as well in that regard.
Yes,
I think he's the
Again, we didn't talk about Bedoya, but he'll be the most interesting player.
That's the way it goes.
There was a really good Matt Doyle thing about why someone like Bedoya is on this roster, and it's because he called him the control. As in, like, when you do an experiment, you have, like, one thing that's a known quantity and you can depend on and you know what it's all about. You can then compare the new players coming in to that known quantity. And so the standard is already quite high in practice and in games. That Bedoya is like the control.
Yeah,
it's interesting,
I like that.
Right?
Yeah, so I like those two nominees. Bedoya also, I think, has the most caps of anyone on this team.
There you go, yeah.
I would also like to see Omar Gonzalez step up into more of a leadership role, because it does seem like when we do see him play,
isn't he not that vocal? I think
he's
that's
not.
the thing. Yeah,
But
I don't think he's going to change at this age.
I guess not. That's fair. It seems
attach
like
a microphone to him, maybe, or like loudspeaker.
Just increase hack into his settings.
Yeah.
Increase the volume by like 100%. We're good to go.
There we go.
But just because I feel like usually he's partnered with somebody else who is the more senior player, and that's not just recently. I feel like that's throughout. He tends to be with a guy who's been a little bit more established or played in this World Cup, and then Omar comes in.
Yeah.
So just in this situation, maybe if he is the starter, just to see him being the one who leads that defense a bit more, to see if he can handle that.
So that'd be one of the like weird little interesting things to watch in the group stage games, right?
Yep.
Okay, once again, Saturday, July 8th is the first game against Panama. We'll get a sort of a more specific preview as we get closer to that date.
We will indeed.
Still to come, we've got a lot of MLS talk to come, a couple of big MLS stories, and we've also got the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network to update. Again, Confederations Cup will be reviewed and previewed tomorrow. That will be Tuesday's show. Before we move on to MLS, today's show is brought to you by Ruffneck Scarves, the fine, fine people at Ruffneck Scarves.
That's right.
If you are looking to support the US by waving a scarf this summer, we would say buy your scarf from Ruffneck Scarves. Not only are they sort of great supporters of soccer in America, they're great supporters of the Total Soccer Show. Their stuff is legit. They are the official scarf providers of US soccer.
They are indeed. And I say once again, we talked about like the origin of scarves on a couple different shows, and about how it was basically, if you didn't want to wear the jersey because it was cold outside, you'd wear your coat, but you could still show your colors. Ruffneck give you that option for when it gets cold, but for the Gold Cup, when it's going to be very hot outside, they also have like the lightweight scarves the silk scarves that are a little bit more breathable, a little bit more appropriate for, say, 90 and 100 degree weather, or 160 degree weather if you're on the field in Seattle.
But sometimes it's just about waving it in the air, right? You just wave it in the air, show it proud.
Absolutely.
Yeah, support the US with a scarf from roughneckscarves.com.
Ruffneck, also the official scarf provider of US Soccer, as we mentioned, Major League Soccer, USL, and the NCAA. And
you're missing one.
There's
and
a really the Total Soccer Show.
That's the one. Yes, we would love a good way to support both our sponsor, Ruffneck Scarves, and Taylor and I, the Total Soccer Show, is to buy the Total Soccer Show scarf. It says Total Soccer Show on one side, it says hello and welcome on the other side.
I'm also curious to see, full disclosure, I have not checked Ruffneck's website in the past couple days, but I'm wondering if they will release a Gold Cup scarf that ties in with the new US jersey.
If they do, can I draw the Gold Cup in chalk?
Sure. Why not?
So I forgot about the jersey. You want to talk about the jersey?
Sure.
So it's not actually officially official, but we've seen it leaked everywhere.
Yeah.
And it may as well be officially released. US Soccer should just get ahead of this and release it.
The rule of thumb with like soccer jersey leaks is the closer to the start of the season or the tournament, that's where the leak becomes more authentic. When it's like new Man United jersey 2 years before that season, then it's a little bit maybe less inclined to be real. But right now, I think what we're seeing is probably real.
And you like it?
I do. I like it a lot. Yeah. So it's blue and red stripes, but then you've got blue sleeves with white stars.
Yeah.
You've got some black stars kind of faded in the blue. It looks very nice. I'm a big fan.
The best description I read of it was from Pablo Maura. Said it was, I may be pronouncing his name incorrectly, I apologize, said it was the Freddy Krueger jersey. Yeah. But in a good way.
Yeah. It's probably the first US jersey since the World Cup in 2010 with the sash that I would really want to buy and may have to buy in the end.
A normal protocol is the jersey is leaked, everybody hates it, jersey is released, people grumble about it. 4 months later, everyone's like, Oh, yeah, it actually looks good when you see players running around it.
Yeah, exactly. In this one, I like it, and I like the mock-up with the blue shorts and the blue and red socks.
Yeah.
My question, though, going back to Ruffneck, though, is I don't know how they would possibly be able to incorporate red, blue, and white stars into a U.S. soccer scarf. I don't see how they could possibly do that in time. Oh, wait, I'm sure all of them have that.
Well, here's the other thing. If you really want to support the team, if you want to buy a jersey, it's like $80.
This is
you want to buy a scarf.
I think $80 is cheap.
You want to buy a scarf. If it's $80, you want to check the labels, make sure it's real. You want to buy a scarf. It is $25 for the official US soccer scarf from ruffneckscarves.com, and you get 20% off with the discount code TOTALSOCCERSHOW, all one word. You'll be supporting us because that way they'll know we sent you. You'll be supporting Ruffneck Scarves by buying a scarf from them.
Yep.
You'll be supporting US Soccer by buying one of their scarves.
There we go.
You'll be supporting yourself by getting 20% off.
And that
It's a win-win-win-win-win-win-win.
And that scarf that you can buy using that promo code, it will have like the actual authentic tag on it.
Yes.
You buy that $80 US jersey, it's going to be made by Nike with 2 E's. That's all I'm saying.
We should start that company.
I bet it's already out there.
That would definitely be a lawsuit, right? Cease and desist immediately.
Especially since we've now publicly announced it. Yeah, it's probably not going to work too well.
All right, so ruffneckscarves.com, ruffneck scarves.com. Link will be in the show notes. And the discount code, again, is Total Soccer Show, all one word, all uppercase.
One gentleman who we didn't talk about in terms of the Gold Cup squad who might be wearing this jersey is Clint Dempsey. Shall we talk about him now?
Let's definitely talk about Clint Dempsey. Came off the bench for Seattle, scored the equalizer in the Cascadia derby, the only Cascadia derby that really matters, if we're honest, to make it 2-2.
Shots fired at Vancouver.
Away to Portland. I mean, this is the big one.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Portland 2, Seattle 2, thanks to a 94th minute Clint Dempsey header.
Some dramatic goals in this one.
Some
late goals in the sense that you had 2 goals right at the end of the first half for Portland, a penalty converted by Fernando Adi, and then 49th minute it was. Portland go ahead.
Still first half.
Yes. 2-1. Yeah, 45 plus 4 is when that one happened. And then 90 plus 4, 90 plus 5, Clint Dempsey equalizes.
Lots of drama. It was almost as hot as the field at the supposed kickoff time. 168 degrees Fahrenheit is what it would have been if they kicked off.
Turf,
fun. Indeed.
Yep.
Where do you want to start then? Do you want to start with Brad Evans' red card?
Yeah, I think so.
So this is where the game really begins to turn, right? Is Portland get the equalizer because Brad Evans really does miss Darlington Gnabry and then accidentally scissor him.
Yes.
Yeah, is that a fair description?
It absolutely is.
So it's not so much Brad Evans' aggression, it's more Gnabry's skill to get away from him on the initial lunge, and then he leaves Evans sort of just grasping with his legs.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that, like, first of all, it does look bad. If Brad Evans were making a mean face, you would be like, oh, he's trying to break his legs.
Is Brad Evans capable of making a mean face?
I don't think so. Except at the end. No, he's capable, I think this is the 4th time we've used this word on the show, he's capable of making a bemused face. I think it was befuddled before.
Flummoxed.
Yeah,
flummoxed is the word
there
we're
we
going
go.
for.
Yeah, because when he gets the red, he looks sort of like, oh. But before that...
But after the tackle, he has a face that's like, oh no.
Yeah, I know what I've done
here. This is bad.
Yeah, and so it's not intent to injure, it's not particularly vicious, but it is dog-so, denial of goal-scoring opportunity.
I don't like that phrase.
I hate it too. Is it dog-so? Yeah. So I think it's a correctly given booking, and it's a correctly given decision, and in the end, it's a penalty.
By booking, you mean red card?
That, well, there's that,
penalty is scored. Portland score again a few minutes later, 2-1 to Portland, until the 94th minute. Cometh the hour, cometh the deuce.
Yes, and I would say cometh the consistent problems for the Portland back line as well, because the first goal comes about from, it's a miscommunication between the Portland right winger.
It's Asprilla tries to head it back to Powell. So right winger just tries to head a ball back to Powell, Alvis Powell, and essentially just gets it all wrong.
Yes.
I can't remember the Portland player the Seattle player that scored.
It's Jovan Jones.
Jovan Jones. Jovan Jones just picks that off.
Yep,
right?
picks that off, has a shot. That shot is saved but parried right back into the path of Jovan Jones, who then shoots and scores. It is Darren Asprilla who has that bad header. It's a little bit of miscommunication, but it's also Asprilla who then scores the go-ahead goal for Portland. So at least makes up for it a little bit. But I think Taylor Twellman did a really good job of breaking down that play. And it was essentially that Portland have had to change things around, have had injuries, have been trying to bring in new players to really solidify their defense. And it just keeps being little mistakes and a failure to really be ruthlessly efficient have seen them concede goals.
But is there a chance that a lot of this is the heat and the surface in this game?
Oh, yeah.
We saw so many slips. Like even that first Seattle goal that we... Sorry to go back to talking about it. I know it's not great when we go backwards in time in the podcast, but that Brad Evans miss and then scissor tackle is preceded by a Torres diving header that he misses. It does feel like maybe the heat and the surface is a genuine problem in this game.
As we always say, I think we try to do it once a show, apparently. Things can be two things. And it can be that, I'm not saying this is what Portland have been doing, but if your team is routinely conceding 90th minute headers off of corners, but those games are also being played in 140 degrees where it's super hot and everyone is dead tired and can't jump anymore, then it might be the weather, but it might also be that you're a little bit slack in the defending as a result. Okay, so it can be both things. But I think that's the case because you look at that first goal and it was just kind of a miscue and then people fail to react to it. Well, Portland people, Seattle people react pretty quickly to get that goal. And the equalizer from Clint Dempsey, it comes from a throw-in, but then it's a lot of sort of Portland being a little bit out of position, a little bit kind of scattered, not really sure who to mark, and they end up not marking the one man you should be marking, Clint Dempsey.
So, Clinton drew Dempsey, the man you should mark. But can we break this goal down a little bit?
Don't try to get all formal.
Okay, so it's cleared, right? It's late in the game. It's a throw-in. It's cleared.
I think Addy heads it once to clear and then heads it again to clear it further.
So it's cleared sort of down. I can't remember the Portland player that's on it, but I do know that it's Christian Roldan, who had started the game as the right winger, but after Evans was sent off, Roldan went and played right back and seems pretty successfully. So
can we add, better watch himself.
Yeah, right. Can we add versatility to the Roldan list? Even just the defensive midfield and right wing and now right back. All over the place.
Indeed.
He gets the tackle in. Yeah. He gets a left-footed tackle. It's almost like he tackles with one foot, then goes around the other side, collects it with his right foot, and then off we go. There's a Seattle counter-attack is on. It starts with Christian Roldan.
It does.
TSS favourite.
Sure. And then I think, it's basically in that sequence, it was Clint Dempsey initially from the throw-in that was then cleared. Clint Dempsey gets away from his marker. Vitas, I think, is marking him. And then essentially stays open from that point on.
Stays on the right wing, sort of, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does a good job of drifting around. He shifts over to the right-hand side. So that at one point, I think Diego Chara thinks that he's covered Clint Dempsey. He's come across, but then he realizes that Roman Torres is now wide open with the ball in the right-hand channel.
Yeah, so Alonso passes it to Torres, right? Yeah. And so I think Chara has to go at that point, even if it means leaving Clint Dempsey. So it's kind of Chara's fault, but not Chara's fault because what can you do?
But I'm also not sure it was Chara's responsibility to mark Clint Dempsey in the beginning. I think he just spots that Clint Dempsey's on because Dempsey's making that run. Right? He's making that run through the middle and is screaming for the ball from Ozzy Alonso, and it doesn't come. So I think that's why Chara is like, I should probably mark him.
Yeah.
But then I should probably mark the guy on the ball who's about to cross it. So he goes to do that, and nobody picks up Clint Dempsey. So he is then able to be wide open and attack the ball, whereas Portland, I think, are trying to react to the ball.
Well, speaking of, it's Amobi Okugo, right, who ends up not marking Clint Dempsey, but he's in the space that Dempsey runs into to receive the ball from the cross from Roman Torres. Side note, great cross from a centre.
Absolutely.
Roman Torres, great cross.
Once again, happy he won't be there for Panama.
Yes, definitely, for all kinds of reasons, right? And you see, we watched the replay several times trying to figure out what Okugo does, because it's as if he goes to jump and then steps backwards and then loses his footing. In the end, he jumps too late and Dempsey's up and bangs it in.
Yeah, I think my read, based on the 46,000 replays we had of it, I think it's that he thinks the ball's coming in lower or at least closer to the near post. And so he tries to make a play on the ball to kind of move to it, make sure he's the one to win that ball. So he takes that little back step and then forward step to spring forward. And I think as he's springing forward, he realizes oh no, I've misjudged this. It's going to go over my head. So he tries to correct, but kind of in midair. And so that's why you see the little shuffle, the little stumble, because he's trying to get his footing back underneath him.
I use this analogy when we were talking about it earlier, when we watched it live. I think it's kind of like a goalkeeper. When the goalkeeper comes off their line, then goes backwards, and you're already in trouble. You may as well just fully commit to the first thing you did, even if it's the wrong thing.
I would agree. It's
kind of like a comedy bit. If there's a comedy bit that's not funny, I've heard comedians talk about it's better to not look embarrassed about it. Just commit 120% to it and just keep going until it becomes funny.
Yeah, it becomes funny at some point.
Salute to Stuart Lee.
But in this situation, true. But in this situation, the goalkeeper usually that's a decision where he's run 3 feet forward, and now he's trying to backpedal. Here, I think it was to let Aku go off just a little bit because again, he wasn't the one who was marking Clint Dempsey. Somebody else probably should have figured that one out.
Reacting to the ball coming
He's reacting, and it really is less than a half a second that he's I'm going, oh no, it's really that fast.
Yeah.
And in that window, he then is at a disadvantage, and Clint Dempsey is going to win that header, and does
2-2. Clint Dempsey. One interesting thing: Clint Dempsey came off early for the US against Trinidad, right? didn't play, I don't think, or definitely didn't start against Mexico at the Azteca. Didn't start this game. I think we're seeing the twilight of Clint Dempsey, where he's still super effective. Obviously, we're talking about his 94th minute equalizer, but he may be more sparingly used.
Yeah, and I think a key part there is if he's okay with that. Because if a player adjusts what they're doing, adjusts their game in accordance with like how many miles they have on their legs and what they're capable of, then that can be really useful. But if it's a player who still thinks, no, I should be starting every single game and playing every single minute, then that builds resentment and it can create some animosity in the locker room.
How do you read the argument he had with Bruce Arena after being subbed off against Trinidad?
I think he was frustrated because he felt like he had the opportunity to go ahead and score and become the all-time leading goal scorer, right? I think he just needs the one more.
I think so, yeah.
And it might have been that maybe they had a plan about he would come off here or he wouldn't come off, but then he wouldn't play against Mexico. Either way, I read it as he wasn't thrilled. And
he wanted more minutes, right?
He wanted more minutes. Yeah. And so it doesn't seem like he is sort of gently rolling into that new phase of his career quite yet.
Do not go gently into that good suspension.
Said Clint Dempsey to Clint Dempsey. Yes.
Yeah. Rage against the dying of the minutes.
Yes. Well done.
Okay.
I'll give you more credit, but I feel like you mostly know that from Interstellar.
I don't know. Whatever. All right. Shall we talk about Dom Kinnear? Surprise sacking at San Jose Earthquakes. Surprise as in, like, it wasn't, like, long rumoured that he's definitely going. San Jose Earthquakes were doing okay, right? Were they, like, fifth
but 2 points out of second.
2 points out of second. And even fifth is in the playoff spots, right? Which is where San Jose have not been for, since 2012, 2013?
Yeah.
It's been 4 seasons, I think.
And, like, I would say, like, the equivalent, at least for me, the equivalent of it, and I'm sure MLS fans will take issue, but it's like, to some extent, it would be like if DC United eventually fired Ben Olsen, and it was sort of like, yeah, like he probably didn't deserve that, and they could be in the playoffs, but I get it because it's been back and forth. And in this situation, I think at least with Ben Olsen, he doesn't really have the resources. It's not like they've been buying all these big players. Yep. Whereas San Jose, I think they obviously have young attacking talent. I think you're familiar with Tommy Thompson. I'm not sure.
I've not heard of him.
No, have you not?
Does he have some sort of train that I might want to watch? No,
he does. But so they've got all this young attacking talent. They're bringing in a new DP.
I can't pronounce his name, but it's a Georgian DP.
There we are. Yeah. I always want to call him Kizanashvili, but that's not it. That's a different player from a different FIFA iteration. So I think in that situation, it explains all the more why Dom Kinnear would be let go, because San Jose are bringing in players, they are investing, they do have young players, but it doesn't seem like it's really going anywhere.
It's also a newish GM. A new president just came in. I think his name was Tom Fox, and it seems like the idea was you've not got us into the playoffs the last 2 seasons you were here. You're doing okay this season, but we're just ready to freshen things up. The man in charge now is going to be Chris Leach. Former. So I was kind of surprised by this. Retired from San Jose as a player, 2011, youth technical director, then technical director, and now head coach. So he's sort of definitely...
head coach, too, is the key one. They're not even interim.
He is sort of very much in the San Jose... I don't know what the word is, like the DNA of the club. So it's not like they've brought in some like random guy that the ownership group knew, right? At least it's someone from inside.
Yeah.
I have no idea like what to think about Chris Leach, because we obviously don't know anything about him as a coach. The only thing I would say is if he was youth technical director, then maybe he's invested in youth. Maybe Jackson Ewell, Tommy Thompson, all those guys get their chance.
And it seems like he has the backing of like basically everybody who makes those types of decisions. Whereas Dom Kinnear, I think everyone who'd like been around when he was hired or rehired, I guess, by San Jose, no longer there. So it seems like maybe the Chris Leach coming in will have the backing, will either have the backing to develop young players and maybe not have a great like next couple months. Maybe they don't make the playoffs, but at least if they build towards something, then at least it's progress. Whereas Dom Kinnear, I mean, if you finish like just outside the playoffs or just inside the playoffs, I still don't know if that's enough of a ringing endorsement to really justify continuing to be there.
And they have big ideas at San Jose, right? New stadium, expensive beers.
Yep. I'm not sure either one of those is a new idea, but sure.
It's a club with big ambitions, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think so.
DC has old stadium, expensive beers.
Correct. For now.
But all in cans.
Give it a year.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on what happens at San Jose. I am really looking at Jackson Ewell, Tommy Thompson. That's my rooting interest.
But I'll say this is part of the reason why I think you and I both are enjoying paying more attention to Major League Soccer this season. Because in my mind, if you said Dom Kinnear, I'd be like, oh yeah, great coach, been there a long time, knows what he's doing, proven MLS coach. And so that's why when I first heard this news, I was like, what? Like that? Oh, there must have been some crazy bust up, must be some crazy drama, something nuts happened. And instead it's just like, no, he's just been kind of consistently underperforming, and they haven't made the playoffs since 2012, I think so. When they won the West.
And since he's been back, the 2 seasons he's been back, they didn't make it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
So there you go. Well, good luck to San Jose, and good luck to San Jose fans.
And MLS obviously will be off a couple of weeks because it's all about the Gold Cup in the next couple of weeks. We'll be bringing you previews and reviews of every game, even the Martinique and Nicaragua games.
These are plans. Are you talking about Martinique versus Nicaragua? Because in that case, no.
Yeah, we're going to watch that 4 times.
Enjoy watching that by yourself.
Final thing on today's show.
Yes, sir.
The Total Soccer Show Scouting Network.
I've heard
Hooray!
of it.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scouting reports to bring you today.
We do indeed.
I'll let you start us off.
Starting with Guy Edwab, scouting Serge Gnabry, the 21-year-old German winger for Bayern Munich.
Okay.
Gnabry has signed with Bayern Munich, says Guy, but the rumor mill continues to turn.
No.
The Sun, Metro, and Bild are all reporting that Gnabry might be sent out on loan with possible interest from Schalke, so that allows the English papers, I'm guessing, to continue to link Gnabry with a move back to Arsenal on loan.
Thomas Gaffney is scouting James Sands, the 16-year-old midfielder for New York City FC. NY City FC has announced that Sands will be the club's first homegrown player, with Patrick Vieira heaping lots of praise on the youngster. Sands is expected to be part of the US Under-17 squad that travels to India in October for the FIFA U17 World Cup. I've seen little bits of James Sands, liked what I've seen defensive midfield, not so excited about him at centre-back.
There we are.
Do you remember that from the U17 qualifiers?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did also enjoy, I read Patrick Vieira's quotes about him, and every now and then clubs will put out when they sign a player, especially a young player or when they promote a young player, it really does read like a football manager thing. It's like, we're very excited to see how he progresses in his career because he's done big things so far, and if he continues to work, he'll do big things in the future. It's like,
While we're on young American...
So that was not to say that I'm not excited about James Sands. It was just more that Patrick Vieira, I think, was like probably doing 20 other things, and somebody asked, he was like, yeah, he's really good. We're really excited to see him. He's done a lot. He's earned it. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, cool. I'm moving on.
While we're talking about young American midfielders on the U17 team, we did the play-by-play for the Richmond Kickers this weekend. Not a great performance by the Kickers. They lost 2-0 to Charlotte Independence. Enzo Martinez, Alex Martinez, both really good little players. But in midfield for the Richmond Kickers, 17-year-old Chris Durkin of the US Under-17s team looked excellent again. I'm once again really excited about Chris Durkin. He is a DC United player on loan at the Richmond Kickers, really more than holding his own against full-grown men in a professional league.
While you were talking, I did the mental check. I would say far and away the best player on the field for the Kickers on Saturday. I mean, boss the midfield.
And that's not even an insult to the other Kickers players, right? He was just excellent.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say he was obviously not the creative midfielder that the Kickers were looking for.
He's not a step-over guy, right?
But I think I called him in the game as the fulcrum, because he is the player who can turn under pressure and still find passes, but then stay deep and play those long balls, but play them with a lot of accuracy. Without really even looking. There was one where he just did a half check and then played a 50-yard ball perfectly in stride for somebody.
He just looks like a seasoned pro, right? He also looks super hyper competitive. He'll run 50 yards, charge you down, shoulder you just enough to not get called for a foul, win the ball, restart the play. So Chris Durkin, definitely a name to keep an eye on if you're a DC fan or if you're a US fan.
Indeed. Another player to keep an eye on is Bruma, scouted by Ryan Kinahan. Bruma's the Portuguese winger for RB Leipzig. Bruma scored an absolute screamer for Portugal at the U21 Euros.
Seen it.
Have you seen it?
Yep.
Apparently that was with his weaker foot, no less. So it was a headed clearance by Bellerin, and it basically drops down from about 25 yards out. Bruma hits it out of the air one time, back of the net, smash. And he was seemingly unfazed by Galatasaray manager Igor Tudor's declaration that the youngster was even worse behaved than Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I guess Tudor played with Zlatan, I think, at Inter. And basically he said, in the time that I was with Zlatan, Bruma behaved worse.
Oh, no. All right, Keith Kalmbach is scouting Federico Valverde, Swervy Valverde, the 18-year-old Uruguayan midfielder for Real Madrid Castilla. That's the B team, basically, right? Or is it the C team? Is the B team?
Yes, CB team, yes.
B team, I'm going to say. Valverde is going to Deportivo La Coruña on loan, says Keith. Good news, as this means that Swervy Valverde will be exposed to upper flight football, and hopefully he can cement a first-team spot in the Deportivo squad. Right, because it seems like step down from Real Madrid to Deportivo, but step up from Real Madrid Castilla to Deportivo La Coruña.
There we are. Final report comes from Todd Ito, scouting Ritsu Doan, amongst other players. Doan is the 19-year-old Japanese midfielder. Doan starred for the Japanese team at the U20 World Cup and is now going on loan to FC Groningen from Gamba Osaka. There's an option to buy, so we might see Doan in the Eredivisie for many years to come.
All right.
Or until somebody from another league buys him.
So thank you to Guy, Thomas, Ryan, Keith and Todd for the scouting reports. If you'd like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, support the show, go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. All the information is there. If you're waiting on your player, email us, contact@totalsoccershow.com, or email me, Daryl@totalsoccershow.com. Itchy feet in the subject line. I will get you your player as soon as I possibly can. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy, and thank you for filing that impromptu Chris Durkin scouting report.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. We'll be back tomorrow to talk Confederations Cup. We'll have a little look back at the group stage, not too in-depth, but a pretty in-depth preview of the semi-finals with specific predictions and everything in it.
Wait, is Patrick Kennedy scouting Chris Durkin?
He is.
Patrick Kennedy, come on.
I didn't want to shout him out. I didn't want to shame him, but yeah, Patrick Kennedy. Thing is, he goes and watches the games. He saw Chris Durkin. Yeah.
I'm assuming in that
he's on vacation this week. We'll give him a pass.
True. I'm also guessing he knows that we do the play-by-play and the commentary. So
he knows we've seen it.
Yeah, he's probably like, what can I tell you?
Hey, Patrick.
Hi, Patrick.
All right, listeners, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.